channel if you want to follow along. And on that, I've put up starter queries that we'll be going through, as well as some commentary about what we're actually doing, so you can follow along, you can learn, you can see what techniques we're using. And then, always a fun topic, POAPs. If you were on the community call yesterday, you heard that we are trying a few new distribution systems out. So today will be a little bit different than yesterday. We're going to be using the POAP app on Android and iOS. And similar to yesterday, there is going to be a secret phrase, and that will be dropped kind of in the middle of this workshop. So about the halfway point, so I'll stop, take a pause, let everyone go through that, and Gabriel is on the line if there are people with technical questions, or go hop into the off-topic channel and ask about that. So keep your eye open, pay attention. It's not going to be hidden, but it will be. You will need that in order to actually get the POAP mid-call. So on recording, Brendan, any luck there?
Yeah, we are recording right now.
Awesome, love to hear that. Cool. So now that we've got that all set up, I think it's time to jump in.
Wait, Jack, tell us who you are and who you think, or why you're talking about Terra.
Sure. So my name is Ford. Great to meet everybody here. Been working on Flipside bounties for 8 or 9 months now, and have there's a lot of always great people in that community that have helped me kind of upscale and upskill at the same time. So definitely felt like I wanted to kind of give back and be that resource and offer this resource out there for anyone else that's just getting started. At this point, what I've been able to do at Flipside has really enabled a lot of other work and growth. Working with some of the protocols to help build out their analytics, for example. So I think what this program offers like a great opportunity to really to build some connections, to build some skills, to get some insights, and to have some fun with data. So that's the purpose behind it. And hopefully, I'll be able to answer any questions that you'll have and kind of be that resource for you. All right, so let's go live. Can you see Firefox?
Yes.
Cool. So real quick, just in case anyone was looking at the app stores, this is what the POAP app looks like on the respective Google Play and Apple Store. And you're basically just going to mint via secret word down here when that time comes. So I just wanted to put that up for people to see. All right. So jumping in, this is the link that I added to the workshops channel, and this is basically what we're going to be walking through today. I added some starter queries that you can all follow along with if you want to, or come back and do at the end, however you want it to be. So basically, I'm quite curious about Anchor Protocol. There's been a lot of news about it recently, which I'm sure have all been following along with. And basically what I like to do is when I see a headline is kind of go see what's going on under the hood. So what I'm going to do today is kind of set that as the topic that we're looking at. With Flipside, it might be a similar type question posed as a bounty, but I'm not going to go down that route. We're just going to say, all right, let's take a look at Anchor. For me, I think the very important side of it is collateral generation. That yields sustains deposits. It's incredibly important. So just kind of simply setting that as our goal. Figure out what's going on with deposits, with collateral, and basically what information can we derive from the data. There's quite a few tables that we can look at here. For a while, we could just go to Terra, but Flipside has this great Anchor table here. This definitely seems like a good starting point. Using the Anchor tables, we can see all sorts of data that's been curated for bonds, borrows, burns, collateral. That probably is going to be the one that we're going to want to look at. So, kind of very importantly, the first thing that anyone should ever do really is just kind of take a look at the data. Understand the structure here. So when I do that, I just kind of do a quick select all, and then the most important thing you can put on it is a limit, so you're not getting far more responses than you need to, and crushing the server for everyone else. And this is going to be here, anchor query, starter query 0, if you want to jump in and follow along. So basically what this is showing us is we're just taking a look at what's in the collateral table. We've got some metadata up here with Terra and what chain it's on, some information about when it happened, transaction ID. We could go to extraterrestrial finder, but over here is what we're looking for. What did they do? Provide, withdraw. We got who it was, the amount, and then we can see, oh, okay, that was 27 B Luna was provided. That's interesting. Let's try to figure out what this data starts to look like. So from here, I'm actually going to go back to this one, so I'm not messing with the starter query. Let's basically just start to look at some high-level numbers. What has activity changed over time? So the way that I'm going to do this is basically just sum up, count however many transactions there were on a day using block timestamp here. And each one of these, the information we're curious about is just the date. These all happened on February 9th. I don't really care about what time it was right now. So I'm going to use a function called dayTrunk. I'm going to pass D for day. And then we're going to say this on block timestamps. And basically this is going to do exactly what we were just talking about there, where it's just going to, truncate this down to the date. And anything that has a common date now will just be listed as February 9th. And all these are different transactions for February 9th. And then we said we were just going to look at the count. How many transactions happen on each day. I'm going to get rid of this now because now this is an aggregation. We don't need to limit how many results we're getting back because we want more than 100 in this case. This is going to run on the whole table, but it's not going to return the whole table to us. It's just going to return a day and then count for it. But in order to get that to happen, I need to use group by. And if these concepts are a little more foreign, I did link to a fantastic SQL tutorial that Mode puts out there that is entirely free. And this is where I learned. And this is where I got up to speed with SQL, was running through this. So kind of each one of these will take you to the relevant page, and you can read up more about it. But basically what this does is saying, all right, we have this aggregation function count. But what are we counting, and what groups are actually being delineated by the count? And we're saying one, or we could say the actual name of the column here. I'm not going to get into the debate there, but both of those work. If you notice, I do group by one. We're still going to get the same thing. And then I'm also going to add an order by, because I want to see it in order. Just because I'm looking through the data, I want to be able to, actually have it happen. The date anchor launched, and then each day thereafter. And this is one way you could kind of look at the data, kind of clicking through. But the power of visualizations is very important. If we go into line, date, count, we can much more easily discern some sort of pattern of what's going on. The number of transactions in the months after it started, 1,000, 700, 600. We can pretty clearly see a general trajectory up to the point where, the lows in December are far higher than the highs in early summer outside of, the spike here. And then this also kind of directs some questions like, I wonder what happened around here where all these collateral transactions were happening in mid-May. And we can kind of go back and start to build out, questions that we want to ask and things that we want to investigate as we start moving forward. But Another thing that's always important to do, let's hit save on this one. I didn't give it a title, but that's okay. Is we always want to check. So right now, I'm just counting each transaction that are in this table. And for the most part, we know that the Flipside data is pretty high quality, but we should always check, right? So what I'm doing here is just counting the number of distinct transactions on each day, as opposed to just the overall number of records in each day. So if we actually let's keep this one open on the side, because I think it's always useful to have what the data actually looks like off to the side. So that distinct is basically going to run through each of these and make sure that on each day, that these are actually unique and different, as opposed to count. And if count is higher than unique, then we know that, okay, there might be some duplicates in there. On March, and when it does look like on day one, there were 3. Then these seem to match. There was one higher here. MTX. And then we can simply see, okay, across time, seems to be a few. And then let's just plot that into a quick bar chart. And there's about 5-6 days in here, totaling like 17, maybe 18 duplicates. That's quite negligible. We can try to parse those out, but one, for the scope of this, I don't think that fits into the overall goal of a beginner workshop, and to avoid 18 individual duplicates out of tens of thousands of records, at this point, it's just, what I'm saying is not worth that time. But checking the data is important. You got to know, that what you're working with is quality, and this is just one way that we can do that. So let's go back to looking at. Might as well use the actual correct figure, but now, let's take a look at something a little different. Instead of just the overall transactions, maybe we want to see, that provide versus withdrawal. And we're like, all right, I don't remember. Okay, so it's event type that we're looking for here, and we want to be able to see how many provide transactions and how many withdrawal transactions were there. Event type. So now we do need to do one other thing, and that is add another group by. So basically, this is not a function. Before we were counting and we were having it group by the date up here, and now we're adding kind of basically a second level. You'll see that for each date there are now 2 rows, and there's going to be one provide and one withdrawal. Hopefully we can simply just edit date, number of transactions. So this should look pretty familiar, and it's the same as it was before, but now if we kind of use that group by, we can basically add another figure onto here, and start to say, okay, interesting. Across time, providing collateral, there's a lot more of those transactions than there are withdrawal. Still a similar uptick. But I mean, this is to the tune of like 100 out of 600, 10 to 20%, and we could, further go in and actually calculate what the split is, but we're just exploring right now. Whereas, okay, these start, the spread gets a little bit tighter. It looks like withdrawal is making up a bigger component of provide. So we'll hold on to that one. That's an interesting query that we're going for. And then, we could also use that second group by in other ways if we wanted to. If we wanted to take a look at which contract we're looking at, which is, basically a proxy for what collateral. So instead of event type, what was the contract label? Yeah. Contract label, we'll split it out there. So here we can see number of B Luna is still just in terms of top level transactions, kind of on either side really, still the dominant collateral, and we know this, just kind of looking at the overall split. If you head over to Anchor, some spikes along the way, but for the most part, B-Luna kind of does continue to reign supreme. So those are good. Those are interesting, like starting points. But number of transaction kind of only shows you so much, and there is more information that we could look at. And I'm more curious about the size. So number of transactions, kind of like a frequency that things are happening. But let's get into the dollars. Like let's actually see how much collateral is being added over time, and what those user behaviors are. Obviously, more transactions would imply something along the lines of we're seeing more users enter, and that's great. We do want to see that continue to increase. So if there are more users, we should probably see a similar uptick in the actual collateral that's out there. So we could. So basically, what we're doing here is looking at something very similar to this. I'm actually going to copy this, and we're still using an aggregate function, but instead of counting the distinct transactions. We're taking a look at the gross volume, and I'm going to keep it with contract label because let's see, by the two different types. And again, kind of first place to go is a chart to visualize just so you can see what's going on, and the color column is going to be contract label. So gross daily volume, huge spike in May, which we would expect after seeing before, the big spike in overall activity here, over 600 mil in U.S. of B-Luna, both providing and withdrawing, kind of all sorts of collateral types of transactions going on there. But otherwise, daily volume's pretty low throughout the summer, and then we can see, pretty big trend of it increasing, to a tune of well over 10x on a daily basis. Pretty quickly, kind of into the end of the year, and then Ethereum, we can also see, all right, there's some nice pops here and there. It's contributing to the overall activity, but not, more and more as time goes on, it looks like. So like high level is always a great place to start. So let's save that, and kind of start to try to actually drill down a little bit in there. And if you hadn't followed along, so now we are up past one. I put in here kind of those splits of B-Luna and B-ETH. And now, instead of by collateral, just so I don't have to write it out, we can take a look at, just flip it back over to event type. And like I said, high level is great to look at, but sometimes, important to, let's just drill down into kind of just recent days, and just take a look at what's happened kind of in the past 90. So what I'm doing here is adding a where clause, and this basically filters, it's a filter on the table. Oops, not on Terra, we are in Anchor, collateral. So this select statement is running on the overall collateral table, and then I'm saying, but wait, I only want this to run on records where the block timestamp is greater than 90 days ago. So just looking at the past 30 days. And then we're still grouping by 1 and 2. So we've got November 12th as the first date, and we're looking at gross collateral volume. And in this instance, I'm not looking at, ETH versus Luna, because at this point in time, all collateral generates revenue for Anchor. So I'm curious just at, okay, like how much collateral has been going in and out over the past 90 days. And we can start to look, okay, big withdrawal spike here, huge deposit spike on January 1st. Kind of seems like it's, pretty even on the small spike days, with some, okay, provide 200 mil, that's a pretty big difference there. I'm curious, like what's this split end up being? We can always eyeball it and try to determine, or we could, write another query, or we could just plop it into a pie chart, where the parameters are simply, we're slicing on the event type, and then we're pumping it full of gross volume in the table that we've got over those past 90 days. And there's a narrow edge to provide. So 51.8, withdrawals 48.2. That's interesting. So there's a slight net increase. That's good. We would probably hope for that, if I were the anchor team, to be a little more significant, but at the very least, there is a couple point spread there, which indicates positive growth. More people are adding than are taking away. That's great. Like, that's something that we very much want, and that's what Anchor Protocol needs, in order to be viable. So in terms of looking at transaction volume, that's building on top of the overall collateral transactions that we saw there. Now we're drilling down and taking a look at what the dollar amounts flowing in and out have been. And what we're going to do here is just kind of put this off to the side again. This is something that I find interesting. Might probably make it into the final analysis, and might clean up the chart a little bit before we get there. But now I'm starting to think, all right, like, gross volume's great and all. We can see some rises and we can see some falls. But what about these spikes? Like, what's the user behavior? Like, what's going on in here? And if we zoom back out, probably should be naming these so I don't get lost. Here we go, to the sum over time. The overall daily activity is one thing, but are users on average providing more or less than they were then? We know that overall transaction volume is way up. Is that the only reason that we're seeing much higher daily volumes of Luna and ETH running through Anchor's collateral? So I always like to look at user behaviors. So let's actually run down and let's start up with start a query 3. So again, like this, you'll notice the structure is very similar. At this point, we are taking that initial just table here, and we're running just different aggregations on it to see what's going on kind of over time using this data in different ways. So for here, we're going to compute an average and simply start with just like the daily average from Anchor collateral on amount USD. And that will take all those transactions and basically do the compute for you of summing up all the daily volume and dividing it by the number of transactions. And that tells us, all right, now we can see pretty clearly some differences. Midsummer, very much a lull. Average transaction was at its minimum. There might be like 2,500, sitting around the $5,000 range. After a flurry of activity after the first month that they started. All right, then with very clear uptick. We're around 20K in September for the average transaction. Massive spike on October 28th. And now we're seeing like sustained collateral numbers pretty high, hitting 100K pretty regularly. So that's 30 times bigger than it was in the summer. That's valuable insight. The size of transactions flowing through collateral is changing pretty significantly. So now, kind of doing what we've done a couple times, we can split it out and see, was there anything that, this is a pretty stark change. Was there anything that changed that? So we can start by, splitting it out again. Let's go through, what was it, contract label? And we can't forget our second one. We'll do it without it just to bring up. There we go. So now we're going to split it out and see line, date, average amount, color, contract label. So now we can see, all right, so it looks like a lot of that change that we saw in August was the addition of BETH. We can zoom in here and kind of take a look at, all right, so B Luna is still finding a foothold around 15 to 20K in average transaction. And a lot of the spikes outside of this day seem to be some pretty big B ETH deposits or withdrawals. But it's it is kind of tough to see the overall impact because there's something clearly going on here in recent days, February 3rd, I believe, and then what's that, January 29th. Some huge movements there, and that's interesting to see, but it's kind of messing with the chart. And if we're looking at overall user trends and trying to actually see some of those fluctuations, they're kind of getting squished down. So the next step that I would do here is kind of take a look first, like what's causing these. Are they outliers, and should we ignore them? Not ignore them, but should we account for them, I guess, rather, in our analysis? So before we jump into that, I think now might be a good time, as it's 11:30. Gabe, how do we want to handle this? It's POAP time.
Yep, we should be good to go, so you can give out the passphrase if you would like.
Awesome. So, if everyone has their app ready, the passphrase, I'm hoping, I don't have, that's why. There it is. I was wondering where the reminder was. Set it for 11:30. Jupiter Galaxy. So let's open up the POAP app. I'm doing it too. Making sure it works. Sorry for the construction truck backing up, if everyone can hear that. So Gabe, is it a secret word or an enter code?
It's going to be a secret word. So when you're in the app, in the bottom corner, there's going to be that mint button. You're going to click that, and you're going to select secret word, and you're going to enter Jupiter Galaxy, one word, no spaces, no caps, all lowercase, Jupiter Galaxy, and press the mint button, and it should take a second, and you should get your POAP in your collection.
Minted. Look at that. It worked for me. That was the 5th of 6.
So you can just go ahead, open up the app, make sure, obviously you need to, in your settings, you need to have your app linked to your ETH address, and then you just click the mint button, go to secret word, put in Jupiter Galaxy, one word, no capitals, and you should be good to go. If you're confused or having a hard time using the app or anything, feel free to DM me. I'm Gabriel in the Discord. Figure you can give everybody a minute to do that, and then you probably just keep going. Should be easy.
Yeah, perfect. Let me take a sip of water and get started again.
Also, if anybody has questions, just chiming in real briefly, you can DM them to me or you can drop them in general, and I'll drop for a good note and let them know.
Perfect, yeah. All right, but in the meantime, we'll jump back in it. So looking at average across time, trying to see any discernible trends. And if we're using a visualization to kind of help direct some of the next questions we're going to ask, these two make it pretty tough. So we can really should have made. So basically, what we want to do is we want to find what what's actually impacting that. So we can use order by, which what we've been doing earlier, just to simply put these in chronological order by ordering on the date. We can do the same if we're just looking at this table on amount USD, and we can basically just put it in reverse order with the biggest numbers up top, which I believe is this one. There we go. And a couple things that I'll point out here. So we're selecting all because we just kind of want to see what those transactions are. As I said, we're ordering by amount USD. and then we're telling it in descending form. So the default is ascending, where it would be A to Z or 0 on up. Descending tells it put the largest number first and count down from there. And then again, we don't need hundreds of thousands of results. In fact, I really think that we only need the top 10 results. And then another thing that we could go in and check, which I did before, is that there are some amount USD values in here that are null, and that will have an impact, and that is something that we should have checked for. So similar to what we were looking at before, just kind of counting up transactions by day, simply with this where clause where amount USD is null, and there are 4 dates on here where there are some missing values, and in this column amount USD is computed by kind of as the tables are being built up, based on the price of B Luna or the price of Luna at this point in time. So it's it's not directly from the chain, so it's possible that there are some missing values in there, and those are the types of things that we should note down, and we should account for kind of in our analysis. But there could be some pretty significant missing dollar values in there. Investigating how much Luna and how much BETH these transactions account for would be a way to go in and determine the impact of this missing data. But at this time, I think that is a little out of scope of what we're trying to do here. So I'm gonna basically make a note on the final analysis, like there has been some identified missing data, maybe plop it into as an error report Flipside, and in the future I could come back and say and kind of manually calculate that USD value, but that is a little more complex than what we're looking for in a beginner workshop. But I did want to bring it up and highlight it, that regularly checking to make sure what data you're working with rather than just taking at face value. That's a very important part of working as a data analyst and putting these putting these things together. So that's why I'm filtering them out right now. We're looking for those big spikes. And then so we can see was that big volume spike in October. And that's what these are here. So we can kind of go through and see, all right, interesting. On the same day, the same user provided withdrew 65 million Luna and provided 43 million shortly after by an hour, 20 minutes actually. Don't know what they're doing. And then let's see, we had BETH, here it is, 100 mil, 140 mil here, 111 mil here. One's a provide, one's a withdrawal. That's probably what's driving really this massive spike here. And if we can go, let's see, October 28th, yep. So what I find interesting about that is that those were, a $300 and a $280 million transaction. And it's bringing the average of all transactions up to 430. And then the 2 BETH ones were of 110 and 100, let's just call it, are absolutely crushing the average all the way up to here. Just because that tells us that what we know is the frequency of BETH transactions is lower. There are fewer. So a massive deposit like that is going to have an impact there. So what I would actually do is I'm going to eliminate outliers, because we're looking for trends, and outliers are important and they do very much factor into the overall growth and of that collateral. But it does make it harder to view trends. So, same query as we were working with before, but here, anything over $50 million USD value, we're cutting out. And what that lets us do there we go, is kind of see the more granular movements without it being scaled down. we can kind of start to determine, okay, I can more clearly see how Luna and Ethereum are increasing. You can kind of see the impact of the more regular transaction volume. And we can start to determine, okay, so, BETH looked like it wasn't all that significant, but there's some big transactions here. The spikes are much bigger. Like if I were Anchor Protocol and I was seeing this big, all right, if our average transaction on ETH is kind of seemingly regularly above where BLuna is, whereas our BLuna transactions are have found a pretty nice foothold around 20,000, maybe spiking up to 1580 there, but quickly coming back down to 20,000. I probably want to find ways to to push more adoption of BETH and try to grab more revenue. But as an analyst, you're going through and you're thinking, okay, like that's something to highlight. Like this is something that should make it into any sort of final report. But averages aren't perfect, if we're looking at actual user behaviors and what's going on, sometimes we want to figure out what the user is doing, as opposed to, we know that there have been a lot of protocols interacting with Anchor, and when that happens, there are going to be larger ones, and averages are skewed up as the max increases. So another way we could look at all of this is simply by adjusting the query, the aggregate function that we are using, and we can take a look at the median. So we can plot this, average amount. The big difference there that we're going to see is BETH. So what the median tells us, is what much more kind of appropriate insight, I think, into kind of what the average user is doing, as where you're cutting out the whales, you're cutting out the protocols, which do impact the average and make it look like it's a lot larger than it is. And we can see here that BLuna hasn't changed all too much in the past several months. We're sitting at anywhere between 1 and 2,000, kind of fluctuating, and kind of confirming what we were starting to infer based on the BETH average, is that users adding Ethereum as collateral are doing it in significantly higher rates. Both the average and the median are sitting well above where BLuna's at. Sometimes at points it's to the tune of 3 and 4x. So that's something I would, another thing I would point out is, all right, that's pull this to the side. This visualization, this information should make it into a final report. I find it very interesting. Like there's some clear user trends and behaviors there. And similarly, we could take a step back and just look at it. We don't care about the collateral type. Maybe we just care about the action, because that's another distinct user behavior. We can see that withdrawal is significantly kind of outpacing where provide is, and it seems like it's been that way for a while. And we could further use those where clauses we were talking about earlier, and compute this separately for just BLuna or just BETH. All sorts of different ways we can slice it and dice it, and pull information further and further out of this table. Things that I'm not going to look at right now that we certainly could are this right here. Users are, we're talking about them, incredibly important. We could look at things like daily active users, daily unique users. We could try to compute, the top depositors. Are there certain accounts that are, by far and away the top users in terms of, overall volume. What we could just look at deposit volume. We could just look at withdrawal volume, and start to paint a picture of what's going on behind the scenes. What are the movers and shakers of Anchor Protocol? and just really kind of dive in and pull that stuff apart. The average transaction per user, maybe we could look at some of those top ones and compute some of these aggregations on a user level. And you could even put in filter on your own address in here and be like, okay, what are my behaviors? So there's a lot you could do. And you can kind of take it any which way you want from here. But this was really a starter. Kind of running through the analytical process, starting with this high level transaction flow from from the start to end, driving down into different types of transaction flow and what the volume is underlying that, and all the way down to all right, what is the individual user doing as proxied by looking at median values. So then, of course, we want to present this. All this information is interesting. We want to put something together. That's where a dashboard comes in. Anchor, collateral, trends. How about that? That seems like a nice title for it. Catchy, but not too. So let's see. We want a starting point. Medium transaction by event type. We'll get there. Let's see if we can't find just the high level daily transaction events. Let's copy the title. We can search for it here. And now I've got a nice title here. And then we want to talk about it, right? Kind of just providing data is somewhat useful in that it actually shows the numbers that people want, but we want to actually start to describe it as we see tracing. What else we're looking at here? We can see just based on the colors, like I said, we could further go in and delineate an actual percentage of these. But it looks like, withdrawal was pretty insignificant at the start. More people were dumping their collateral into Anchor, and that's what we would expect for the protocol that had just launched. But if we look at, recent days, that comprises a much more even split. Recently. Well, and there's plenty more I can write about it. For now, I'm not going to do that. That will kind of make its way into the final one that you can access and that will be posted for everybody. So moving on from there, we went from higher level to kind of gross volume, and we're looking at what that looked like. So sticking with this current split as we have it, I think provide withdrawal. Let's do that. Gross volume by transaction type. And as we were talking about, it looks like some days it's even. Some days there's spikes, but we're not really sure, what the overall split is. So we did make that other nice little pie chart, so we could follow up with that. And I liked, personally, I like putting both these on here because we can kind of see what's been happening, granularly by day without it being, too overly detailed or overburdened. And then, anyone that has that question of, all right, well, who's winning the race here? We've got that right here in a nice, refreshing new chart. There's plenty we can say about this as well, which I will show you near the end. And then, we got into user behavior. So let's see, which one did we want to pull out there? How about average transaction size? That was, interesting to look at how, BETH was growing, average transaction. And let's pick the one where we excluded outliers, because if we were to put kind of this chart in there, it doesn't really tell the end user all that much, other than there were some huge spikes of BETH in the past week or so, and then otherwise there's just some bumps in here. Scaling is important. Like these massive transactions really squish down the impact of everything else that's been going on, and kind of makes the visualization about one thing, this spike over here. So we're going to add the one excluding outliers. And then because we are doing that, if this is something that's going to end up public facing, you should always kind of be open about what data is there. Once this is published, you can actually just click the drop down and anyone could see the SQL behind it and infer that. But it's just better to kind of be upfront about it. And then what else are we looking at here? So it looks like for a long time, the Luna size, found a trend around 20K per day. Until recently, we're starting to see in 2022 much higher figures for B Luna. And then that last thing we talked about, looking at a median instead of the average to get a different view, kind of withdrawing, pulling out that the protocol impact and the whale impact. So this was the chart that we pulled up for that. So we'll drop this in here. We can continue to say something about this here, describe kind of a difference in behavior here. And then median by collateral. I'm going to choose to include both these because I think both behaviors are interesting. That in general, BETH is far larger than B Luna. And then if we look at kind of what's happening, withdrawing on average is happening at a much larger scale than providing. And we can start to make differences that, maybe people add collateral kind of in the way that you save money, where you squirrel it away little by little, but then when you do need to pull it out, you're withdrawing a higher portion of it. So that would be my hypothesis there. So wrapping it all up, if I wrote this up this morning, so you didn't have to just sit on a workshop seeing me typing, I would kind of put together that whole thought process into some words, in nice formatting, and write up some analysis and try to extract some value from the data beyond just showing the pictures, and actually analyzing user behavior and talking about what we see here. And what we see happening, what's going on. So all these starter queries and everything, they're available here publicly. Feel free to follow along if that helps. If you have any questions along the way, definitely please hop into the workshops channel that we've got. And I tried to include as many of these, intermediate tables that we put together along the way. As we kind of went through our process of starting from, just a blank table, going all the way down through and exploring data. And I think the most important thing is that, each query provided an answer, but also, more questions. Was, okay, oh, that's interesting. Let's dive down into that. And if you look at these are all put together with pretty straightforward SQL, and all of these, functions and aggregations and techniques that we're doing here. I made sure to link to them along the way. So, like I said, Mode is a fantastic resource. there's so much to learn out there, and I think, if you were to go through kind of some of these on the actual Flipside data, thinking through like, okay, let's, what are ways that I could learn how to use having, or, if we wanted to jump into joins, what Flipside tables do I want to bring together? There's a lot out there. Like, I was looking at anchor collateral, but what's another really important part of collateral? Liquidations. And I could go through and, do my work for collateral, and then I could kind of start to explore liquidations and then decide, I want to bring these together. I want to see what's happening as users are adding, users are withdrawing, and then as the protocol itself is liquidating them when certain things happen. And then you can end up putting together, some really insightful and powerful, analyses and dashboards using what are, some pretty straightforward SQL techniques. So I hope this was helpful. Please, run through this if that is a good way for you to learn. Like I said, the video will be up. And I personally I'll stick around for a bit in the actual workshops channel if there are any questions from anybody. I obviously can't see Discord as I'm recording, so I don't know what's been going on behind the scenes, but I hope everyone enjoyed this. And I guess at this point, first let me stop screen sharing, and then we can just go back to audio. Are there any questions? Anything anyone wants to go through?
I'll just jump in real quick and say thanks for putting all the resources together. That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know, if you noticed, but on the top of that page, I did link. We are putting together just a kind of a general resource repository on the metrics.git Gitbook. Just a couple in there so far, just with documentation, linking to the mode SQL tutorial. That will continue to grow, and we're hoping that can be a space for everyone to reference. GJ, I saw you DM'd me saying there were a couple questions. Sorry, that was earlier in the workshop. I didn't see what was going on Discord on my laptop, but if you want to relay those. Data pipeline, how long does it take for data to populate? That's a good question. It is, definitely not meant to be kind of real-time data. It does take the chain walkers some time to actually go out, index each Terra block, and have it run through its actual transformations until it ends up at an end table. I think the goal for Flipside is, within an hour, for the data to be pretty fresh there, so that it's, analyses are accurate and up to date. But it would, it's never going to be real-time data if that's what someone's looking for. And of course, there are times where it's a little, further behind, and that'll get caught up. Where do you recommend I start as a total beginner / newbie to Terra? I would say start exactly where I started, and that was really with Flipside. So I had held Luna, and I had kind of used Anchor by the time I found these first bounties. But what really got me started with all of this was going through easy bounties and actually learning a little bit about a protocol. So I think it's easiest if there's something that like Anchor for me, how the protocol works and the mechanics of it. It is much easier to interpret the data because you can actually go in and have like an understanding of what's going on. If I were to jump into a like Uniswap bounty, I would have to spend some significant time actually brushing up on the actual mechanics of Uniswap v3, because you need to know what's going on outside the data in order to interpret what the data is telling to you. And then in terms of actually like parsing data, if that's part of your question as well, using transactions. So like going through your own Terra address, finding an old transaction from when you yourself deposited collateral, and then just look how it looks like in the database. You can filter using that where clause that we talked about, where transaction ID equals, and then just paste it in there. Be like, okay, what does my data look like? I know exactly what happened when I did it. This was me adding, 1B Luna as collateral, and then, here's my other transaction where I borrowed against it. Like, seeing what those look like, help you actually understand how it's structured as data. Hopefully that helped answer the question. If not, follow up in the workshops channel. I can definitely talk through that more. All right. It sounds like the silence event. Oh, I see something in the workshops. Count one reliable, count number. Yeah, so I use count one. It's a little bit faster than using count star Piper. So it's just, it does work the same way, but it is just a little more optimized than using count star. And with that, we are at the top of the hour. So I just want to say thank you everyone for coming out. Hopefully this was a good resource. It will be posted, on that same page for this, alongside the rest of the workshop notes and the starter queries and everything. And those are available, in Flipside. You can just click it open, hit copy and edit, and kind of and run from there and use it in your own way. Hopefully this has helped people, as they go through their next bounties or just own independent work with a little bit of process. So yeah, thank you all for coming.